I'm Liz McNeil, and you're watching Under the Dome. Today we get to speak with Clerk of the House, Jan Harrison, who will be talking to us about conference committees. The legislative process is kind of tricky. Getting a bill to become a law is also a tricky process. We have Jan Harrison, Clerk of the House, and she's going to take us a little bit deeper. There's one process that I think is confusing to me, and that's called conference committee. Tell me a little bit about, you have to be on the House floor when they are meeting, and what exactly do you do? What are you in charge of?
There are three of us that keep track of everything that happens.
Okay.
You know, when a bill is called up, who's carrying the bill, if there are any amendments, any votes, any motions, anything like that. And two of us prepare the journal, and one of us keeps the computer up to date on bill status.
Okay, excellent. Now, the process that we're here to talk about is conference committee. Can you kind of walk us through, first of all, what is conference committee?
The standing conference committees are comprised of the members of the standing committees.
Okay.
So if during the first of the process the bill went through the Public Health Committee, then the Speaker will name the Conference Committee on Public Health if that bill goes to conference.
Now, does a bill only go to conference committee if it's amended? Is that what I understand?
Yes. If the opposite chamber amends a bill differently than they received it. For example, if the Senate amends a House bill and it comes back to the House with Senate amendments, if the author doesn't like those amendments, then they have two choices. They can accept the Senate amendments and vote on it in fourth reading, or they can make a motion on the floor to reject the Senate amendments, request conference. If the House chooses to adopt that motion, which they normally do, then we will send a message to the Senate notifying them that the House has rejected Senate amendments, requested conference, and the Speaker has named House conferees. And like I said, we have standing conference committees. The Senate has ad hoc conference committees that usually comprise 5 to 7 senators, always including the principal Senate author of the bill to serve as the chair of the conference committee.
Now, is there a timetable to get through the conference committee process as well?
Both sides can set an internal deadline.
Okay.
The Speaker hasn't set an internal deadline yet for conference committees. Once we have sent a message to the Senate, if it's a House bill or if it's a Senate bill, the Senate sends us a message, then the opposite chamber must grant conference and name conferees for that measure to be considered in conference.
Okay.
So it takes both sides. The Senate could choose to not grant conference, and then that bill just sits there. Once the bill is in conference, the House has requested conference, the Senate has granted and named. Now the principal author gets with our research, fiscal, legal staff to prepare a conference committee report, and that's commonly called a CCR. They communicate with their staff person what they want this bill to look like, and once they're satisfied with the language of the measure, then they schedule it with the chair of the conference committee.
Okay.
Let's back up a second. To get it out of conference, you have to get a majority of the conferee signatures.
Okay.
So let's say it's a House bill, the House author takes it to conference committee, he has 12 conferees or whatever on the standing conference committee, he has to get 7 signatures, and then he needs to get it to the Senate author to get the majority of the Senate conferees signed off on it. And then once he has the majority of conferees on both sides signed off, then they file it with the clerk's office. If it's a House bill, if it's a Senate bill, they file it in the Senate. Then if it gets scheduled on the floor, they bring it up for consideration. They can adopt this conference committee report, or they can also reject it again and request further conference. I mean, there's very many steps through this process. I think that's why there's so much confusion.
Right.
And we only do it about 3 weeks out of the year.
Okay.
So, you know, that's also an issue. Right. Let's say they adopt the CCR on the floor, then it's fourth read, passed, hopefully, and then we immediately send that conference committee report to the Senate, and they go through the same thing. They adopt the CCR, fourth read it. If all goes well, then they send it back to us, we enroll it, and present it to the governor for approval.
Okay. So what I hear is you don't want your bill amended.
That is the best process, is to take care of all the issues up front, pass it in the House, have the Senate pass it without doing anything to it, and then it comes back, and roll it to the governor.
Okay. Thank you, Jan Harrison, Clerk of the House, for explaining conference committee.